This podcast provides a platform for our guests to share their experiences and inspire our listeners to be brave and bold in pursuit of their dreams. As you listen, we invite you to explore how these concepts apply to your own story. You know what to do. Be great and be grateful. We're mic'd up with Mike DeChocho. Hey guys, if you're a very busy, time-pressured entrepreneur who is tired of dealing with computer problems but don't know who to call, this may be the most important interview for you to listen to all year. My guest is a well-known and respected expert in the area of helping small to medium business owners dramatically improve productivity and lower operating costs. Welcome to the show, President of EscapeWire Solutions, Michael Beecher.
Good morning, Mike. How are you?
Good morning. I'm doing well. Thank you so much for carving the time out to be here. I'd like you to take the opportunity to give our audience an understanding of who you are, what you do, and what EscapeWire Solutions is. And then we're going to dive into some questions to kind of peel back the onion a little bit.
Sure. Yeah, happy to. EscapeWire Solutions is a managed technology service provider. We're located in Buffalo, New York, serving clients primarily in Western New York, but we also serve regional clients throughout the United States, as well as throughout Michigan, downstate New York, Florida. We specialize in companies generally between 10 and 100 employees. Most of the clients that we work with are organizations that have reached a point in their evolution where information technology and security has gotten beyond their capabilities or desire to manage any longer, and they feel that they need someone who's got some expertise. So that's often the time when we get called in or contacted and hopefully come in and help those companies move their businesses forward and manage their technology better than they were in the past.
Yeah, it's a good problem to have, right? When you're growing to a point where you in the beginning, it may be one person, two people on your team, a third guy who's the tech guy kind of running it. And then eventually it gets over their capacity because it's a larger organization, and that's where you would come in. Say that again. Was it 10 to 100 is your key market?
Yep, generally 10 to 100. We've got some clients that are a little smaller than that. We've got some clients that are a little bit bigger than that, but that's generally the sweet spot for the bulk of our clients in that size range.
Okay. And something I focus with my clients on heavily is their value proposition, right? Once they figure out their client avatar or who they're going to market and sell their products to, of course, it's the value prop. What's going to make you unique about you, your mission, and your vision? So tell us about EscapeWire. What is your value proposition, if you can deliver that in a concise way to someone? Maybe, the old saying is an elevator pitch, but how do you separate yourself?
I've always said it. I've said it for many years, and I repeat it on a daily basis with our team, that the thing that separates us from every other IT support company out there is our laser-like focus on providing excellent customer service. Mm-hmm. I tell our folks that, there's a tremendous amount of IT companies out there. Everybody's doing what we do. It's not rocket science. And the way that we're going to make ourselves different and retain our current clients and attract new ones is the fact that we are very focused on making sure that the customer service experience and the support that they receive is just absolutely top notch. We refer to it as white glove service. When a client calls us at any hour of the day, whether it's on a Saturday morning or a Monday morning, they know that they're going to get responded to promptly. They're going to have a good experience. Mm-hmm. And we measure that religiously so that anytime a client opens a service request with us, as an example, every single one of our service tickets has an immediate customer feedback button at the bottom, and they can tell us whether we did a good job, an awesome job, or a bad job. And we have a mission in our group that if any of our clients hits the bad button, that one of the owners and partners, which is me and my partner, will immediately call that client and figure out what happened, what do we need to do to fix it. We're not perfect. Yeah. But thankfully, we don't see very many of those. And when we do, we move quickly to fix it. But oftentimes we're seeing good and awesomes. And we love our clients to give us that feedback because it's how we make ourselves better and continue to support and build our business.
Sounds like what you're talking about is a net promoter score, right? Is that what you guys refer to?
Based on net promoter score, yep. It's actually even a little simpler than that. It's 3 little buttons at the bottom of every ticket. They don't have to put a number in it. They don't have to do anything other than click that button. It immediately gives us an immediate email feedback on that engineer or support person that helped them. They can actually put in a comment if they like, and I get an email immediately with the results of any of those tickets that get graded.
I want to stand that for a little bit longer. So something I want my audience to realize is Yeah, we're in an age, it's a digital age where people may not be interacting face to face for the consultation, even the sale itself, right? Or the presentation before the sale happens. It could all be digital, but there's still the most important element, in my opinion, and it sounds like you're right there with me, is world-class customer service, right?
Yeah,
Every touch of the
absolutely.
way. Once the sale is made, it doesn't end there. There's the follow-up, there's the follow-through. There's the referral piece as well, and if it's something that's digital too, the referrals happen when someone interacts with your brand and they love it and over and over and over again. They're going to be called an attractor, right, opposed to a detractor who puts that negative comment in there. And it's really easy, I know, because I've used that NPS system with prior companies. You could have 100, or the scores are different based on how you're using the system. But let's just talk about easy numbers. You could have 4 5-star reviews and 1 negative one, and that can really put a kink in the thing, right? But
Absolutely.
here's the second layer, and the reason I wanted to stay on it is a customer service situation is also a great opportunity for a business to shine. And I think a lot of companies, and I'm in the social media industry, so I think a lot of people get scared to respond. They either get scared, so they don't want to respond, or they get nasty, which is totally the opposite of what you need to be doing, right?
Yep.
So you can either elaborate on that, or just tell me a little bit more. How do you handle? Maybe you have a review that comes through, which is great insight because you want to provide a solution to it. How do you guys respond to that?
So, when we first implemented that system, we made a concerted effort to actually promote it to our customer base and let them know what we were doing and ask them, would you please rate us? We want to get your feedback. And we spent a fair amount of time communicating that to our clients. And we continue to reinforce it because, as as things progress and people get into their normal groove, they can kind of forget about those things. So on a regular basis, we do contact clients and just let them know, just remember, please, to continue to rate our tickets. Let us know if we're doing a good job. And if we're not doing a good job, we want to know that more than anything. I've, like I said before, when we get a quote unquote bad rating on a ticket, we are super committed to making sure that we personally reach out to that client. And that's not just one of my engineers, that's the owners of the business personally make a phone call and we find out what happened, how did it go wrong, and then what do we need to do to fix it. And our experience has been that when people are if they put in a bad rating, they're not really looking to give you a hard time. They're just wanting to get their problem fixed and know that they were being noticed,
Right.
and attended to. And if you can
Yeah.
show personally that you're willing to contact them directly, you're interested in why it didn't work, and you're more than willing to help them fix it. We
Hmm.
generally don't get people that are upset with us. They're more often they just want us to let us know.
Yeah.
And for us, it's just an opportunity. We've always said it's just an opportunity for us to figure out, did something go wrong in a process that we have that we need to fix? Or was there a miscommunication issue that we can work with one of our staff on to improve themselves? So
Right.
again, I just tell people, don't worry about getting bad. It's not, we're not rating you. We're just trying
Hmm.
to figure out what went wrong so we can fix it. And that's just a simple thing
100%.
about it.
And, and you want to know timing is so important with customer service because if you didn't know about it, how are you going to ever address it? Right. So the first way
Absolutely.
to do that is realize it. And a quick way to do that is get feedback from the customer. But I think about like the restaurant industry, right? Like a great waiter totally has a pulse on their section of the room and also each individual table. So if you and I went out for dinner and something was not right with your food, right? And we were it was easily recognizable if the waiter would have been paying attention to our body language and everything, and they don't say anything, and then at the very end, someone comes over, asks us how it was, and we get real and just tell them about it, and then they try to comp it or whatever, and it just feels very backwards, like, oh, we want you to come back again, but the problem when it happened wasn't important because we didn't even ask you about it.
Yeah.
Doesn't feel good. So you can get comped and still feel kind of like you were had, opposed to, hey, bad situation happens. We acknowledge it, right? First is acknowledge it, then come up with a solution, and hand in hand with the client, walk through it, right? They're going to totally appreciate that differently than you trying to just save face after the point.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
No doubt about it.
So here's the deal, guys. If you're tuning in, I want you to check out escapewire.com, ESCAPE EscapeWire.com. And that's where you're going to find the 7 most critical IT security protections every business must have in place. And you can learn several tips and strategies to help protect your business from cyber crime, data breaches, and hacker attacks. All 3 are super important and obviously very relevant in the world today. So help us to better understand, to the business owners and entrepreneurs out there, what should we be looking into before we maybe bring someone into our office to help out with this stuff?
Well, I think, in terms of what is really at the top of mind of most of our clients today is network security and protecting their electronic assets.
Sure.
People, you don't have to go very far or read very much in the media to hear about the multiple reports of various attacks that are occurring on a daily basis. And we have clients that are in both regulated and non-regulated industries. So in certain industries, they have to comply with certain things. In certain industries, they're not necessarily required. That's changing quickly now with some of the new regulations that are coming out that are more broad and general, such as the New York State Shield Act, as an example. We can talk about that at some point.
Sure.
But for us, when we talk to clients about protecting their networks, their assets, the first thing you really have to do is figure out what are your vulnerabilities, and where potentially do you have a risk for a breach or something like that. So the starting point for all of that activity is really starting with the risk assessment and figuring out where exactly does that client have a potential problem. And risk to us is essentially the intersection of your electronic assets in your company, your databases, your financial information, your client information, the intersection of that with any vulnerabilities that you have, and then the threats that are out there. So where those 3 areas intersect, that's your risk. And you got to figure out what your risk is. And then at that point, once you know your risk, then you can put a plan in place to begin to shrink that risk down and eliminate it, or at least shrink it down to a point where you feel that you can comfortably manage it and are comfortable that you have done everything that you can to protect yourself and your company.
And let's do a SWOT analysis of your current cybersecurity situation. Some are going to have none. Some are going to have something. Maybe they're paying for a service. And third would be they really need a bigger system in place. And so identifying that is super important, as you mentioned. So once someone may identify, hey, we do need something, are there different layers, like for a small business owner opposed to medium or larger? I know you're 10 to 100 employees, so that would be considered more small to medium-sized business, correct?
Yeah, I mean, there's a number of factors you have to take into account. I mean, there's some basic foundational things that any business, regardless of any size, in today's day and age, needs to have in place to assure their protection. And then, based on that business's size, complexity, or potential like regulatory requirements, at that point, you might start to spread that out and make that a little broader in terms of the types of protection that you need to have in place. However, the basic foundation really is the same, whether it's from a business that's 10 employees or a business that's got 10,000. There's some basic things that any business should and needs to do in order to make sure that they've got a level of protection that allows them to protect their assets.
Yeah, it's not something you want to be reactive to at all. Once someone has a breach or a situation like that, not only are they in the limelight for the wrong reason, right? Their 15 minutes of fame on the news is not going to be a pretty one, right? If it's not a larger company that's already well known, that may be the first time a company hears of you. And if it's a customer breach of information, that's a huge situation to react to. So putting the proper measures in place, bringing an expert in like yourself or somebody on your team is obviously a measure to take to limit that from happening. But even when someone has that in place, is there still some level of being susceptible, like to these? I don't really understand how these hackers even do what they do, but how do you know, like, if somebody's trying to attack a system? Can you guys see different alerts and things that
you can? Yeah,
flags?
sure. There's a number of different technology tools that you can implement that would allow either that company or ourselves, if we're taking care of it for that company, to be monitoring for what we would generally refer to as anomalies on that network, where something is happening that is not part of the normal course of electronic transactions going on within that business. So that is a piece of an overall larger, cybersecurity program. And, that's one piece where you have the ability or the need to monitor network level events so that in order to determine if there is in fact something going on that you can't, easily see. When we talk about cybersecurity as an example, so, we talk about cybersecurity in three main pieces of it. In terms of having a complete program, you need to have some certain technologies in place, and that would be an example of what you just mentioned with monitoring that network. You need to address the people in your organization, because the people are really the soft spot. 75% of all breaches are generally emanating from an email that a human being did something with, like clicked a link that opened up a door that caused an attack to happen. So the training and education of your people is critical to a successful program, along with the technologies that you can implement. And then the third piece, kind of the third leg of the stool, is the creating a culture of security and awareness within the business. And that ultimately comes from the leaders in the business, the owners, the managers. They need to be able to communicate effectively to their people that cybersecurity or protection of their assets is one of the most critical things that company and those staff need to do and think about on a daily basis. So you got your technology, your people, your culture, and ultimately, if you can get those three pieces aligned and working properly, at that point, what we usually call it is you've started to harden your attack surface. So if in fact there is an attack, if someone is trying to breach, you're hardening yourself as best you can in order to fend that off and protect yourself. So that's kind of how we think about it.
Guys, thanks for tuning in. If you heard that right there, I recommend going back and listening to those three again. They were have the right tech in place to monitor your business and situation, so you can see those anomalies, and they can kind of almost like a doctor. They're looking for what doesn't look right. From the last report to today, there's a couple things, some activity going on. People, obviously, the most important part of your business are your people, and then your culture. So, would you say, with that being said, is it more common for an internal attack to occur or external attack?
Most of the attacks are internal. And when we say attack,
I know it sounds scarier than it might be, but it is.
Yeah, but an attack often, like I said earlier, it emanates from something that happened within that business. And generally it's because, a human being in some way, shape, form, or another did something to enable an attack. And it's not normally something that they're doing out of purpose. They're really maybe doing it just because they didn't realize what they were doing. And again, oftentimes that is they click a link in an email or something to that effect.
Which is referred to as phishing. If people are tuning in, check that out. You can Google how to protect against phishing, right?
Yep. And they become very smart, these people that do these things. They, in certain cases, there's what I would call automated attacks, where a link is clicked, some type of a malware download is automatically downloaded onto that network, and it automatically starts to replicate itself and cause damage. What we're also seeing now more and more, which is even, quite honestly, it's a little scarier, is what normally people would call spear phishing, where there's actually a human being behind the attack, and they are actually physically tracking the activities in that business and finding and looking for vulnerabilities so that they can actually attempt to get a human being to do something that they want in order to commit a fraud. So we often hear about, two instances that we've come across personally, is the gift card scam, where someone will breach an email account, get in, and then be able to actually look at email traffic between staff people and executives within the business. They will then hijack that email address, and oftentimes will use it as an example where they'll hijack the CEO or a senior leader's email address. They'll email a staff person and request them to go and purchase, X amount of gift cards, $1,000 worth of gift cards. And then what they ask them to do is they'll say, just send me the codes because I'm out of the office and I need these for a client. That happens. I cannot tell you how many times that happens all the time.
I've had that happen with, thankfully it wasn't me, but it was with somebody I was working with, where they sent me an email and it looked like it was from their email, right?
Yep.
As you just mentioned. And it was that similar situation where they said, hey, when you swing into the office, we need you to stop and get a couple things at the store.
Yep.
Can you pick it up? And then once they talked about a gift card being involved, I called that person immediately. And I'm like, first of all, this doesn't sound like it's written by you. Second of all, what's going on with the gift card? And third, let's get this thing taken care of. So
yeah. And then
I was able to identify it, but some people, can be taken,
Oh, absolutely. It happens all the time. Absolutely. It happens all the time. And the second larger one is wire transfer fraud. I mean, that's a huge one. Again, similar situation. The staff person gets an email from the purporting to be the CEO or the CFO and requesting them to make a wire transfer. And, without any protection measures, they go ahead and execute it. And all of a sudden that money's gone. It happens all the time.
What would be great is if these hackers actually took their wisdom and used it for good. Wouldn't that be something?
Yeah,
I mean, it's like amazing that the level that they'll go through to execute this stuff. And if they just flipped it and did it for the good of humanity, they could be making more money probably than they're trying to steal from everybody.
Yeah, it's becoming.
Yeah, exactly. Enlighten us on the SHIELD Act. You mentioned, is it a New York State SHIELD Act? What is that?
The SHIELD Act is a New York State regulation. That's correct. It was signed into law by the governor July of 2019. So last summer it was signed into law. It's an all-encompassing piece of regulation. Any business any organization that does business in New York State, you don't necessarily even have to be a New York State incorporated business. If you are a business outside of New York State but do business in New York State, you are required to comply with the New York State SHIELD Act. And the deadline for compliance is the end of this month, March of 2020. And every New York State business will have to comply with the SHIELD Act. And the SHIELD Act ultimately is a consumer protection act. And it was put in place in order to protect personally identifiable information such as Social Security numbers, email addresses, telephone numbers, driver's license numbers, any type of personally identifiable information that's contained within a business. That is what the SHIELD Act was designed to protect. And it's basically requiring any organization in New York State or doing business in New York State to comply with its regulations in order to affect that protection of that data.
And if someone right now hears that and they're like, oh, I need to look into it and make sure I'm complying, and I'm thinking of that about myself as well. And just, some of the simple steps that they can take would be calling on a company like yours, of course. What's the, average startup cost to make sure that someone is complied? Is that too brief of a question or?
It's a little bit challenging to do that because, again, as I mentioned earlier, each business is a little different. There's foundational things that every business needs to have, and then it kind of goes up from there, determining on the size. Again,
it's usually pretty affordable, though, right? To start like a small
business. It is really affordable. I mean, we have clients that are spending multiple thousands of dollars a month with us on just their managed technology, where we're managing outside of security, and they're able to add security onto their portfolio of services from us for as little as a couple $100 a month to, a couple $1,000 a month. It just depends on, their size.
The size of the business. And that goes for anything, whether it's a larger team, you're going to have, your costs are going to go up on just about anything. Ordering supplies for the team, the lunch on Wednesday is going to cost more if you have 57 employees than 3. So it's no different. But thank you for sharing that about the New York State Act. And it's something everybody needs to check out. Share with us, if you will, a case study or something that felt really good. You're working with a client, maybe they were going through a tough time, and you had to provide this solution. Maybe, I don't want to paint it too much, but tell us about a time you helped a client and are very proud of it.
Oh boy, there's a couple good ones, I guess. We've had a number of clients that we've had for many, many years. Some of those we've grown up with, when they started out small and now they're large organizations, we've grown along with them. I think one of the ones that we're talking about security and protecting our clients' assets, and spending some time with that. We had a client about 4 years ago. They were a small commercial printer in the city of Buffalo, and the only thing that we were providing for them back in those days, we'd often do just backup service for clients. We didn't do all their technology. We just provide them backup service, which we no longer do anymore just because of the risks associated to it. But that client, we were just doing their backup for them. They managed their own IT in-house. And I got a call from the president of the company on a Saturday afternoon, and I was in my backyard, and he said to me, I just got an email that said, that's got pictures attached to it from my vacation this past year when I was out skiing. And the email says, I have your data, and to prove that I have your data, here are some pictures that were on your server, and I'm going to need from you $3,000 if you would like me to release your data and decrypt your server. So that was really one of the first defined and direct breach attacks that we had experienced with one of our own clients. And ultimately, that attacker, quite honestly, I thought he was a bit of an amateur. He didn't really know what he was doing.
Sure.
And he said, if you pay me this money, I will, decrypt your hard drive data. My client at the time decided that he was going to pay it, even though we did have the backups for him, but he wanted to see if he could get around that. He then ultimately made the payment. And when he did that, the attacker actually screwed up his own attack, and he ended up deleting the entire contents of their server. So at that point, my client had no alternative except to go back and restore from backup. And thankfully, I had essentially demanded of him, if he was a friend of mine, I had demanded of him, then I don't really care if you're going to manage your information technology in-house, it's fine. But if I do one thing for you, it's going to be your data backup and protection. It's just the single most critical thing we do for clients. And we were able to restore him. It took, a day or two to get him back, but we were able to restore him completely and basically save all the electronic assets that were in his business. So we were gratified that we were able to take care of a client in that fashion. We also learned a few things out of that, and he did as well, that caused us to really start thinking about security and what our clients were faced with. And if this was the type of thing that we were going to see in the future, we needed to make sure that we were better protecting our clients. So we were quite pleased that we were able to help that client, and to this day he remains a client. He now allows us to manage his technology. So he no longer tries to do it in-house. He's given us the keys and we manage it for him. And since that time, he's not had another problem, breach, or attack. So
yeah, it's a tough business because, your best story to showcase what you do is sometimes some of the most, horrible things. Similar again to a doctor, where if they can really show, hey, look at this patient in the arc of from poor health to great health. Yeah, there's going to usually be some difficult times involved. And that's why it's so important that people reach out to a professional and not try to just do it themselves, or kind of they think they have it done. And then when a bad moment happens, again, we go back to that reactive opposed to proactive. Yeah. What I really would like to do, this is a personal, something I really love doing this show, personal benefit of doing it is hearing the backstories of a startup company. That gets me excited when people put ideas together and then they take action on them. And anyone who's listening that's maybe thinking about starting a business, maybe they're in business and they're looking to go to the next level, which I think should be everybody tuning in right now. Tell us how you started the company and maybe some adversity that you had to overcome to get to where you're at today.
Sure. Yeah. I'll give you a brief history. So, I graduated from college. I moved to New York City. I worked for a large multinational company for a couple of years. I lived in New York and then down in Philly for them. I wanted to get back to Buffalo. It was where my family was. I come from a big Irish family in Buffalo. We've been here for decades and decades. My great-grandfather moved here from Ireland years ago, obviously. And I really loved living here and continue to do so. So I came back and I went to work for one of my family. We had a business at that time. I went to work for that business. I worked there for about 10 years, and I really determined that it wasn't really going to meet my personal and professional goals for what I wanted to do with my life. So I made a decision with my family to sell that business. And we, as a family at the time, so my father and my sister were in that business. We decided to sell the business that we were in, and we really wanted to stay together. We'd always been in a family business, and we made a decision that we were gonna buy a Tim Hortons franchise. So we decided that we looked very
not
hard.
A horrible decision, guys. If you're tuning in and you're not from Buffalo, I mean, every 50 feet on a popular road, there's a Tim Hortons here. So
yeah. So we almost did it. At the very end, we decided it really wasn't quite what we wanted together. And we decided that wasn't the path we wanted to travel. So we ended up deciding that we were all going to do our own thing. My father was getting ready to retire. My sister had other goals in her life. She went off, and I decided that I needed to kind of reinvent my life and figure out what I wanted to do. I'd recently gotten married. I had a small baby. And I decided that I wanted to remain in Buffalo, but I wanted to be in an industry that I felt would just provide an open amount of opportunities, and I would essentially be able to do what I want and craft my own life. So I had a friend, a close friend from high school, who I had actually hired to automate that previous family business I was talking about. And I called him up and I said, I'm interested in your business. It was computers and technology services. Mm-hmm. And he offered to hire me. And I said, I'm by nature a sales and marketing kind of guy. And he said, Mike, you can certainly do that in our industry, but you'll be much more successful if you're willing to learn the technology and the backside of this business. And he's like, what if you came in as a systems engineer? And I said, I have no idea how to be a systems engineer. He's like, well, we'll teach you. Don't worry about it. So I was young. I didn't have a tremendous amount of responsibilities. I had a baby, but I had a family and a wife that was working. So we made a decision and we took a risk. And I went to work for that company as a systems engineer. I spent 5 years there. Eventually, I moved over to sales and marketing in that company. And then that was, gets me up through 2004. And then we made a decision. I made a decision. I wanted to move on because I felt there were better challenges out there. I wanted to get to the next level. And my friend who we originally had hired me, we left. We started our own company back in 2004. And we didn't have any clients. We didn't have an office. We each had a laptop. We had a credit card. And we had his kitchen table. So that was our first office. Every morning I'd get up for probably the first, 3 to 4 months. I would get up and my going to work was driving out to his house in Amherst. Uh-huh. And, I had a key to his house. I'd open the door. I'd walk into his kitchen and we'd sit down at the table and we'd start to work. And, we got a couple clients, and then we got very lucky. We were out doing some networking, and we happened to be in a restaurant, and we got introduced to Larry Quinn from the Buffalo Sabres at the time. That was when Tom D'Alessano owned the Sabres. Yeah. And Larry was the managing partner, and we got introduced to him at the restaurant bar. And he said, what do you guys do? And we told him. And he said, well, we could use some of that help down at the Sabres. Would you be interested in coming in? And we said, well, of course, we'd love to. And subsequently, we went down, and at the time, they were looking to automate some of their customer service process in their ticket office, and they needed some help technology-wise in general, and they hired us. It was literally, at that point, we were probably 3 or 4 people.
And a good handshake at that point, right?
Oh, yeah, just a handshake. Yeah, we got hired by the Sabres. We did a ton of work for them over the years. And then, we just started growing the business from there. And then, at around 2007, we made the decision to purchase another business. Mm-hmm. It didn't go very well. It had more issues under the hood than we originally imagined. So we had to retool. We had some risk that we had to manage better. It caused us to rethink what we really wanted to do with our business and individually as partners, what we wanted to do. My original partner was interested in other forms of technology than I was. So we decided we'd split the business up at that point. And I left with a small group of engineers. We were probably at that point about 25 people. We were growing fast, and I left, and I called up who's now my current partner. I called him up because we had known each other, and I said, listen, I'm looking for some office space for my team. And he said, well, why don't you come over and come into our office, and we can just operate out of the same offices. So I took him up on his offer. That was about 2007, mid 2007, 08. And then through the course of the next year and a half, having worked out of the same office, we looked at each other and said, maybe we're better off just working together as a single entity. He was in the technology business, but in the hospitality industry. And in 2010, so 6 years after I left, in January 1, 2010, we reformed EscapeWire, and that's the business that you see today. We've been at it now for 10 plus years as a combined entity.
And again, guys, check it out, escapewire.com. Thanks for that insight. And again, I love hearing those stories because I can picture it. I can picture you guys at the kitchen table with your laptops. Hey, what are we going to do? What's this look like? And you don't know. The number one thing you need to do is move forward, right?
Yep,
And
you just
go and
work.
do that.
Put
So
your head
tell
down.
me, when you're not in front of a computer, hopefully not putting out a fire for a client, but when you're not working on EscapeWire, tell us, what do you love to do, and if you can get away for a minute and kind of take a deep breath, what does that look like for you?
Oh, well, I've got three children. They're getting a little older now. I've got one as a senior in college, my daughter, and then I've got my son is a sophomore in college. Katie, my oldest, is out down in Baltimore in college. My son's in Chicago. I have a younger daughter who's a sophomore in high school. And really, for the past 15 years of our lives as a family, we've been in and out of hockey rinks in Western New York. Both my son and my younger daughter were our hockey players and have been for many years. I started them out when they were 3 and 4 years old, and they both took to the sport. And essentially youth hockey, both on the boys and girls side, has become a lifestyle for us, a passion for me. And as my son graduated and moved off into the bar leagues, my young daughter continued to have her passion, and she's won 2 New York State championships. She's committed to play Division I NCAA hockey as a freshman in high school. She made a commitment to play that at a college level, and it's really what I spend almost all of my time on, is helping my kids now with just to my daughter, helping her move her hockey career along. And we've made great friends, and we've had great experiences, but it's really all I've ever had time for.
Sure.
If I'm not working and with my kids doing other things, it's really generally been in a hockey rink in Western New York.
Yeah, that's great, though. And I appreciate anyone who knows, obviously their family is what's going to drive more time with their business is what's going to drive more time with their family. And it's a back and forth. It's a give and take. You're not going to be able to be at every single, tournament, most likely, right? But you're making a great effort to be there and be present, which is hopefully appreciated. I'm sure they appreciate you being there, right? Or
Depends on the day, I guess.
yeah, right. Sure. Hey, Dad, we're hanging out with our friends and we're going to carpool with them or whatever, right?
Yep.
They're
growing up.
But it's important to have a work-life balance. I know it's super difficult. If you can even share maybe some of the things how you've made that work. You have 4 children, you said, total?
3 children, yeah. 3 children, and I'm very active in the community. I serve on a number of community boards, Boys and Girls Clubs of Buffalo.
Yeah, that's awesome.
It's been a long time passion of mine. I've been on that board for 20 years. I serve on the board for my local church. I'm just one of those guys that always likes to be busy. I've actually taken up in the past couple months doing some yoga just for some personal physical health exercise. Yeah. And I just find that if I am able to do certain things like those, whether I'm in a hockey rink or taking a class like yoga or serving some time and spending some time in a community board, it allows me to kind of keep my batteries fresh, because the regular work days sometimes can be long and very stressful sometimes, just by the nature of what we do for our clients. And, I've always made a point to make sure that I have some time to be able to do some things to keep me healthy, mentally and physically. And, just being with my kids for the most part is enough. But as they get older and, kind of begin to leave the house, I've found that, I need to find other things in my life that are going to, give me that balance that you mentioned. And it's kind of an evolution, I guess. It's an ongoing, part of trying to continually reinvent myself and make sure that I have a healthy life. I've got a great marriage and a wonderful wife who has had a successful career on her own. And we've raised 3 kids in that kind of environment, just always a million miles an hour every day since they've been 1 or 2 years old. But that's what we chose to do. And I don't think either of us would ever do it any different if we had the chance to.
Cheers to that, man. Cheers to all that going on. I don't know if you have a drink there that you can cheers, but we can pretend. There it is. Cheers to that, man. Congratulations, on building your company to where it's at today and building your family, to be your supporting cast as well. 2 things I wanted to highlight there is, you've been mindful of still taking time for yourself so you can essentially be the best version of yourself, both at home and at work, right? Yep. If you're not taking that time, whether it's yoga, meditating, reading a personal development book, taking a half hour to just decompress yourself. So before you go to the hockey tournament, you're in the right mindset. You're not on the phone the whole time, whatever it might be. I just ask anyone who's listening, reflect on that. Make sure you're taking care of yourself so you're the best dad, husband, father. That's the same thing, father and dad, but business person, CEO, right?
Yep,
Friend.
absolutely.
It could be someone who calls you, right? They just need some 5 minutes of your time. But if you're not in the right mindset, you can't even give that to them. So
Absolutely. 100%.
I think that's phenomenal. The other thing that we talked about a little bit ago that I wanted to circle back on was you started this all when you had your first child was just born, like a year old, you said?
Yep. Mm-hmm.
So
Well, when I left the family business, my daughter was a year old.
mhm.
And then when we started the business, when we were sitting around the kitchen table, by that time I had 2 kids.
Wow.
So my son was just born the year that I left. So I left the company we were with in May of 2004, and my son was born in July of 2004. So we had 2 kids at that time.
Yeah, and I wanted to highlight that as well because, I had this question come up to me, like, is it advantageous? My daughter's 5 now, but she was 2 to 3. I went through a divorce. I was happily married for 7 years, and it didn't end up working out. But I allowed that as a moment for myself personally to reflect and see what I wanted to do moving forward. And starting a business at that time with a young child, doesn't seem on paper advantageous, right? Because you have a super important responsibility, but at the same time, you knew that, but you still had a purpose-driven passion that you and your buddies knew you wanted to achieve, and you believed in yourself to do it, right? You didn't doubt yourself.
Nope.
So I think that's important, and it even goes back as simple as if you're listening and you're not a business owner. I know the conversation about having kids when you get married, they're like, "Oh, you're gonna have children yet? Oh, it's not the right time." I don't know if there's ever like an exact right time to start a business or have a child or make an important decision. There's going to be a moment in life you have to make a risk, right?
Yeah.
Hopefully it's more calculated than just, shooting in the dark. Like, have a plan. You got to have a plan. But, so I like that part of your story that you didn't sit around and wait and try to create the perfect thing first and then do it. Because you don't really know what the perfect thing is until you actually go out and do it. It's going to have iterations until you're actually in the field doing it.
Yeah, there's an old phrase you probably heard: perfection is the enemy of good. If
you can't
wait
get perfect if you're not doing anything,
you'll never get it going because it's never perfect. It's always good, and sometimes good is enough to just make a jump or to make a decision in your life, whether it's a family decision, a business decision. Good is sometimes just it's fine. That's good enough, and move on from there. And that, there would be no way that you could describe the startup of our business as perfect. I mean, it would be impossible. No one would say the perfect way to start a business is have no clients, have no office, have a credit card, and you work around a kitchen table. That is not perfect.
Yeah.
But, again, we put our head down and it was good enough. And we built on it over the years. We evolved it, continued to work on it. And, we are where we are today simply because of that decision many years ago to leave where we were, to leave the comforts of the company that we were in, and to just take a swing at it. And we were able to do it successfully.
Yeah, I love that. I mean, without having something to work on, you can never perfect your craft. And you talked about being good. I like my send off is be great and be grateful. And the reason I say that is I feel if you're out there doing something, your purpose is on fire, right? And you're excited. You're not going to want to do something half-assed. Pardon my French here, but you're not going to want to go and be mediocre. You're going to want to do it to the highest level. And it's really not so much about that person. It's about how they impact the environment around them. So if they have a great attitude, a great mindset, a great product or service, that's making the world a better place, number one. So they're actually serving, because I think that's the most important thing to do is serve first. And then, things come back around. You don't do it with the anticipation of, I give you this and you better give me something right away in return. That's not what this is about. So be great. And the second part is be grateful, live in gratitude, reflect and meditate on it. Can you tell me 2 or 3 things you're grateful for? I think I know a couple that you just mentioned recently.
Yeah, I mean, obviously we talked about my family. I think I'm most grateful for my family. I come from a big Irish family in Buffalo. I've got 27 or so first cousins. we don't all live here in Western New York, but we do gather once a year in Ellicottville as a group. We have 50 or 60 Beechers come down, and we just gather together. We celebrate each other. We get to see our cousins that we see. I'm super grateful for that. I am super grateful for the people that I work with and my team here. We couldn't do it without the dedication of everybody that works for us, and I always tell people, and I tell my own staff, I'm like, you guys technically work for me, but in reality, I work for you. I'm here, I'm there to help you get along and get to where you want to be in your life. And if you're successful at that, that'll mean that I'm successful. So I'm super grateful for that. And, between my work there and my team that I work with every day and my family, that's more than enough for most people to just be thankful for what we have. And, and I go about my day with that in mind. And, I made decisions along the line in my life that allowed me to do that. And for that, I'm very thankful.
Oh, man, I love that. Cheers to that again. Last thing I like to do, and if you have anything else you'd like to share, please do. But I like to wrap it and tie it all together, going back to my mission statement for the show, which is to inspire my audience to be brave and bold in pursuit of their dreams. If you can give them one takeaway, one laser-focused message that just says, do this, and you'll be on and moving in the right direction, what would that be?
Oh, I think I would just say, don't be afraid to get out of your comfort zone. Don't be afraid to do something that, maybe gives you a little bit of a scare. Nothing cannot be pulled back for the most part. Anything can be fixed for the most part. Short of you having a health problem that you can't manage, you can do anything in your life. You can always go back and fix something. Very few things are irretrievable. So, and you don't have to do, you don't always have to jump in up to your neck. You can test, you can think, and you can use your brain to figure out if a choice in your life or a decision that a place you want to go to, if you can do it, you can use your head to kind of reduce your risks and figure out a plan. 75% of people's success is mostly in their head. I think it's nothing to do necessarily with their physical skills or even their mental intelligence. It's just their mindset and what they believe they can do. And most people, if you believe you can do it and you're reasonably smart and you got a plan to figure it out, you can probably generally do it. So don't be afraid.
Man, I love that so much. Thank you again for coming on the show and delivering that. And your story is incredible. You've built something from an idea, and you've been, calculated and course correct, as you just mentioned, over time, right? And you learn from the mistakes. You either win or you learn, right? And you keep moving forward. I love that message there. And I know my audience is going to benefit from taking that mindset and applying it to their own business. So again, talk about gratitude. Grateful for you being here. Thank you for your time. I have a lot of, we talked for, it looks like about an hour, and cutting this down into a promo is going to be difficult. There's a lot of great insight there, business, mindset. We talked family. I mean, that's the core right there. So thank you so much.
You're welcome. Thanks for having me, Mike. It was great to spend an hour with you.
Hey guys, I appreciate you hanging out all the way until the end. I wanted to also acknowledge all the madness going on right now surrounding the COVID-19 pandemic, coronavirus. My thoughts and prayers go out to everyone to find peace and not let fear overtake your comfort, both mentally and spiritually. Be smart. Tune into the recommended procedures in your county. Do not be ignorant. The best way to get through this is to stop it from continuing to rapidly spread, and we can do that if we limit the opportunity. Stay home. It's really that simple. Do what you can from home. Enjoy the extended time with your family if possible. Have a game night. Do your calls from Zoom or an online platform. Read a book. Learn a new skill that helps you better serve your fellow man. We're in this together. Let's keep rolling. I love you guys, and thank you so much for tuning in. I wanted to get that out there. Let's stay together during this hard time and use it as a time to love our families and our neighbors. Be strong and persevere. Appreciate your reviews and messages coming in on social media. Keep them coming. You guys can check out more show notes and information on each episode at mikeduppodcast.com, MIKEDuppodcast.com. We're powered by Social Chameleon. You guys know what to do. Be great and be grateful.